Sede Vacante. Expectations of the next Pope. In this week's Journal interview, we speak with Roman Catholic Cardinal Walter Kasper.
Your Eminence, Cardinal Kasper, the whole world is looking towards Rome in anticipation of the Conclave. Just a stone's throw away from here, the other cardinals and you will be gathering to choose Pope Benedict XVI's successor. What will be the greatest challenge facing the next Pope?
The biggest challenge in the modern world is to give people a sense of outlook and direction. The Church has a spiritual mission, not a political one. The new Pope must be a man of faith who understands how to talk to God in such a way that people understand him. To explain to people in a human way that God accepts every individual in every situation. He's called upon to communicate that and to give people a direction and a sense of meaning. Right now in the Western world, we're living in a sort of vacuum of meaning. Everything revolves around consumption and power and so on, and of course justice. I think that our primary task is for the Church to once again preach its fundamental message of the gospel.
Even today's globalized world is still a world made up of different continents with different needs. Should the Church pay more attention to the demands for reform from Europe, or calls for social justice from Latin America, or Africa's demand for more influence? Shouldn't the Church respond more strongly to different regional issues?
It should. I agree completely. We may talk about a globalized world, but that's the financial world, the world of business and technology. Cultures are still quite different. Deep conflicts remain. The Church must try to create one out of many. That gives the local, the continental churches a certain freedom. But the real strength of the Catholic Church is that we are still able to maintain unity in the midst of diversity. At the center of this unity is the papacy. It's a great gift for the Catholic Church. But one must not confuse this kind of center with a centralization of power. Sometimes people do, but we have to get away from that.
Center, centralization, it all brings us back to the Vatican and the central church authorities. The last weeks and months have seen lots of criticism of the Curia. What must change in order for the Vatican to regain credibility? In order for scandals to be resolved and the Vatican to be seen in a different light?
Well, for one thing, we need more transparency. There are scandals that certainly took place, but also others reported by the media where no one knows the entire truth. For that, we need more transparency. There has to be more cooperation at the Vatican. The Curia must become more international. It must take into account the concerns of local churches and their parishioners. What I'm saying is that it often takes on an insular characteristic. We have to open up and listen more. We can't do everything that people want, but we must lend an ear and react to their concerns. That's where the Curia needs a shift in thinking. All of this is actually provided for in the Constitution by which the Curia operates, but it has to be put into effect. For instance, the Cardinals should gather here regularly, meet and inform each other. That doesn't happen often enough. Also, we must approve reforms. There's a lot of catching up to do.
Centralization in the Church also means it's difficult for individual regions to follow their own paths. Is it possible to further reconcile the Catholic and Protestant faiths before the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation in 2017?
That will be a major challenge for the new Pope, and it is already one for us in Germany. Our country is divided among Catholics and Protestants. No one would like to see progress in reconciliation more than I would. A sort of stagnation has crept in over the last few years, though not at a parish level or among the dioceses. There it's been going quite well, but we've seen difficulties in international dialogue. We must find ways to do justice both to the unity of the faith and to diversity. 2017 will be a year of reflection for both churches. I don't like the debate over whether we should celebrate it. We can commemorate it and think about what it means for us today. Secularization has progressed to the point where committed Christians, those who really want to be Christians and not just call themselves Christians, we don't have a choice. We must stand together. And we must bear witness together. And move forward together. And take on responsibility.
If we reflect now on the papacy, does the Reformation of 1517 still pose a dilemma to the papacy today?
Of course. Back then it posed a huge dilemma. Today's papacy looks very different to the one that Luther encountered. But I think that the Catholic Church can contribute something to the unity of the faith through this role. It offers a center, a sense of cohesion to the religious world. Sometimes that's painfully absent from other churches. They freely admit that. But we must reevaluate the manner in which the papacy operates. That's a debate that John Paul II consciously opened up. He asked all the other churches to advise him on how the papacy should best operate, in order to reach consensus with everyone, or as many as possible. We should recognize the positive aspects of the papacy, and then look at how we can achieve our goals, and how we can leave space for Christians to be free, too.
In Germany, there's a lot of debate about the Catholic Church and women's issues. Will cardinals discuss women's issues, either in discussions before or during the conclave?
I don't think that'll be an issue at the conclave. The conclave's task is not to discuss specific issues, but women's issues are very important. They pose a big challenge today, no question. John the 23rd was the first to say that's a sign of the times. We have to take it seriously. But the answer to that issue isn't priesthood. We can do a lot to ensure that all believers bear witness to the faith in terms of the universal priesthood. And after that, we can ensure equal treatment of men and women. There are a lot of leadership roles in the Church that don't involve being ordained. And if we could do that, we will have achieved a lot. And I would like to thank women. No parish in Germany could do without them. They couldn't function without women's mammoth, voluntary efforts. They've earned a vote of thanks, and that should be said in public.
Would it be completely utopian to imagine the day when women could participate in the election of a pope? At times, you wonder whether at some point there'll be female cardinals, if not female priests.
That would require extensive changes to conclave rules. By virtue of a 1,000-year-old tradition, cardinals elect the pope. They were originally the chief priests of Rome. Today, they are the world's most important bishops. You could very well change that, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. That's because this would involve some very fundamental changes.
We are witnessing a transition between two popes. Pope Benedict XVI has stepped down after nearly 8 years. The world is awaiting a new pope. Will Benedict's time as pope be remembered for its scandals 20 years from now? What message will people associate with Benedict? What will this papacy leave behind?
His was a very spiritual papacy. Yesterday he said again that the strength, the power of the Church is in its good news, and that was his concern. He delivered sermons very often. He taught catechism. And a lot more people were listening to him than the mass media would lead you to believe. And a lot of those people took something from him. They learned from him. So in this respect, he left behind a very rich legacy. And the second important change he made was his resignation. That will shape the papacy in the future. I don't like to use the word revolutionary, but his resignation is a huge rupture in theological and papal history, and it's one that will linger on.
Does the Pope's resignation remove the superhuman burden of becoming Pope? Does it lessen the challenges his successors face and lessen the odds of failure?
His resignation changes the office in the sense that it's become more human. Benedict said that he no longer had the strength to meet the daily challenges of a fast-moving world. That's quite humble and modest, and it required a great deal of human generosity. But every future pope will have to decide whether to take this path. They will have that choice. And in that sense, the office is a bit closer to all of us.
There's a tension in the papacy. On one hand, the Pope is a head of state, and on the other, a religious leader. It's an office that has worldwide authority and also commands respect, somewhat like the United Nations Secretary General or the Dalai Lama. The question is, does the world still need someone like this today?
It is precisely in today's circumstances that we need a moral voice and spiritual direction. There's an emptiness at the core of things, and that is particularly the case in the West, although it's spilled over into Asia and into other continents as well. The Pope provides that voice. We saw proof of that when he stepped down. People realized it. It reminds us that someone remembers the moral foundations of humanity, and that there are some things that people cannot change. Of course, there are changes through technical and scientific research. But there are spiritual foundations of humanity, and it is very important to have that voice challenging us to be just, to bring us to peace. That voice will be more and more important in today's increasingly difficult world.
Cardinal Kasper, sincere thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you.